They're they're an incredible football team. They are not the biggest team. They haven't got the biggest names, but they work the hardest. Nathan and Dylan Edwards make a huge difference. They're a different team when they come into the side, and they just don't have the depth that they once had.
Well, there's plenty to cover with Billy Slater, and it's all thanks to Tab. How are you, Billy?
I'm very well, Salty, and that one team would have to be the Bulldogs. It's the only unbeaten team in the competition after 4 rounds. They're 4 from 4. And the other thing that grabbed my attention this weekend was teams have to adapt to conditions. There was so much rain around Sydney, 6 games of NRL in Sydney, and obviously that battle of Brisbane as well was a wet affair. So, teams and players just have to adapt to conditions at this time of the year. Could be 30 degrees or it could be raining. So, I thought there were a few teams that adapted better than others.
Yeah, and in some of those games, as we saw particularly with the 2 games on Sunday afternoon, bright sunshine, and then 5 minutes later, the wind picks up, in comes the rain, and you've basically got to adapt to those different conditions within a game.
Yeah, I was at Brookvale, Four Pines Park on yesterday, and that was certainly the case. It was umbrella up, umbrella down. The sun was out, and the wind was up, the wind was down. So it wasn't just adapt for the game; it was adapt on the run. Manly got out to a really good start in the dry conditions, and then it turned into a bit of a grinding affair. So it wasn't just a one-off. It was you had to adapt as you go.
Yeah, let's talk about that game, Billy. And as you said, the quick start for Manly, they scored those 2 tries in the opening 16 or so minutes. And then Parramatta got themselves in the contest. And would you think for Jason Ryles it's a case of what might have been had they converted a couple of those chances that they had late in the first half?
Yeah, to be honest, I think Jason Ryles will be thinking what can be in the future. It's not going to be right now, and that's evident with the personnel that they've got, the inexperience in their team that they have, and just where the football club is at the moment. So, look, it would be really frustrating because knowing Jason, he would want results now, and he would want the team to be performing better, but at the same time, he would have a view on the future, and they've fought pretty hard the last couple of weeks. I've been pretty impressed. We've covered their first 4 games on Sunday afternoon footy on 9, and the last couple of weeks have been much more improved in terms of the character that they're showing. They still have a lot of work to do with their detail in attack and the way that they attack the opposition's try line, but that will come. I think there's enough positives for Jason to work with going through the weeks and the reviews and continually looking at incremental improvements in this footy team that, there's enough positives there to keep their spirits up.
Let's talk about Manly and their performance. Tom Trbojevic went off injured at half-time, injuring himself in that first half. Looks like they're going to be without him for a month, but another solid display for the Seagulls.
They're a really good footy team, and they can blow you away within 10 minutes. And the start of the game, like I said, it was dry conditions, and they went to work really early. And they've done this the last couple of games at Brookvale in the opening few rounds, and I think they scored 42 points in their first game at Brookie and then 40 points in their second game at Brookie. This one was a tougher affair, but they started brilliantly with the football and scored a couple of tries, got out to a healthy lead, and then the weather changed and it got bogged down a little bit. But I think Anthony Seibold would be really proud and impressed of his team. Had the injury to Tom Trbojevic, who went off at half-time, but he played half of that first half. Battling that knee injury. He had both his knees strapped, and it looks like an MCL, which it's disappointing for Tom because he's had so many injuries, but hopefully he's only out for about a month and he can get back on the field and it's not a long-term one for him. But I suppose, Salty, the story of the day was Daly Cherry Evans, and he's been the story of the week, with the announcement 100% football on Monday night on Channel 9, and the fact that he's not going to be at Manly next year. How was the crowd going to receive him? What reaction was he going to get when he ran out? Well, I can tell you I was on the field when they ran out for their warm-up, and it was a very warm and upbeat. Everyone was on their feet. They were applauding Daly. So he even said after the game that he was a little bit emotional when he got that reception running out for the warm-up, and it would have been a tough one for him, but it didn't surprise me that he was in the top handful of players on the field.
He was very good yesterday, and the other thing that's not surprising is that reception. I mean, the Manly fans love him. He's such a good bloke, is Daly Cherry Evans. We were talking about him on the podcast last week about how long we could think he could play, not realising that his whole career was going to turn upside down just a few hours after we finished recording last week.
Well, it's so interesting. It's an interesting situation because, I haven't spoken to Daly about this, and I don't know a whole heap about it, but just looking from the outside in, it looks like the club have made a decision on an older player that they're going to look to the future, and they're going to plan to the future before he's ready to retire and before his form is indicating that he's going to retire. That's what I read, and Daly's forced to go and play somewhere else. I know that there was an offer last week, but at the end of the day, do you offer a player that has been at your club for 15 years? He's won a premiership as a halfback at your club, and he's playing some of the best footy of his life. Do you offer him a half-price deal? That's what they've done, and. Looking from the outside in, Daly's obviously just gone, well, that's not fair. So I get it, and you're well within your rights to go and look to the future. But I'm going to keep playing on, and it won't be at Manly. So, I applaud him for coming out and, making a stand and just saying, okay, this is what it is. I'm okay with it. Let's go and play for the rest of the year, and I'll work out my future from there.
Yeah, well, he's handled everything so very well, has Daly Cherry Evans, and now I'm sure we'll find out in due course where his destination is going to be, and he's going to be in no hurry, is he, Billy? And nor should he be.
Well, yeah, I'm not too sure, and that'll happen in due course. I think that's why Daly has made a firm decision that he won't be at Manly, just so that the club can move on, and he can have the time that he wants to make a decision, and he's even said that the decision might even be to retire. Who knows? Who knows what'll happen in 4 months' time? The fact that he's made a decision that he won't be at Manly next year, everyone can digest that. Not that the media is ever going to move on from it, because they're going to continue to speculate, which is what we're talking about now. And but at least he can focus on his footy and plan for next year in the time that he thinks is appropriate.
We just make sure that any retirement plans don't include an early retirement for rep footy. Just make sure he's available for you.
Well, you know what? When you get to that sort of age, those conversations do happen with yourself, and I'm sure with your family. And but knowing Daly, he's always been really passionate about playing State of Origin. I know how much he loves that environment, and you do most of your talking with your form and the way that you play on the field, and the way that he's playing doesn't suggest that he wants to give any sort of footy away. So, I haven't heard otherwise.
Good stuff. All right, let's move on from Manly, and we touched on them right at the start. The Bulldogs, without a couple of key players, Matt Burton, Viliami Kikau in particular, very good at Shark Park on Saturday night. And that's a Bulldogs of old victory. Billy, the old dogs of war, they got in the arm wrestle and got the job done. And as you pointed out, the only undefeated team in the NRL.
They're an incredible football team. They are not the biggest team. They haven't got the biggest names, but they work the hardest on the team actions in the game than anyone else in the competition. That was more than a very good performance. That was an incredible performance. don't worry, the Sharks really put it on them physically early in this match. And I thought this was an incredible game. This was a high-quality game, semi-final intensity, and the Dogs, they looked like they were going to get out-aggressed really early, but they sustained their aggression for longer than the Sharks. The Sharks couldn't sustain it for as long as the Dogs did. And like I said, they do the team things incredibly well, better than any other team in the competition. And, we could go through their whole side. Connor Tracy, obviously, Stephen Crichton, Bronson Sherry had an incredible game. Toby Sexton and Bailey Haywood, like they're not the top halves of the game. And Bailey Haywood's filling in for Matt Burton at the moment, and he was outstanding. Sexton's kicking game and involvements, both of their defence. Max King, Saluka Fafita, Jamin Salmon. Preston was outstanding. I thought there was a guy that came off the bench, Harry Hayes. You wouldn't know Harry Hayes if you walked past him along the street, but I'll tell you what, he is an incredible player. Kurt Mann's doing a great job. Satili Tupanua, he's grown a leg going to the Dogs from the Roosters. So Jack Dodd, he made his debut, and there was incredible scenes after the game. Like I said, I could go through their whole team, and they were all 8 out of 10 or higher, and Cameron Ciraldo should be so proud of not just his footy team, but what he has created there at the Dogs. If they play like that, and they have been playing like that for 18 months, if they play like that and they get their best footy on at the end of the year, they can be right there when the whips are cracking.
And impressive, isn't it? When you go through those names you mentioned there, I mean, there's a couple of guys who were just bit part players at other clubs, struggling to get into 17s, and here they are.
Toby Sexton couldn't make the Gold Coast team.
Yep.
Connor Tracy, he was at the Sharks, he was battling away. Blake Wilson, like all these players are players at other clubs. Max King, he had a whole heap of injuries down in Melbourne, but he's playing outstanding. Saluka, literally fringe players at other clubs have just gone to the Dogs, and they know their game and they work so hard at it, and they are relentless with it. They stick to it like glue.
And the other player you mentioned there, Harry Hayes, I'm a member of his fan club. I love watching him play. I just think he typifies what the Dogs are all about, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I love what Kurt Mann's doing coming off the bench as well. He's probably one of the most creative players and tough as nails. I actually debuted with Kurt Mann. I think I've mentioned it before, but he's from the middle of Queensland, out at Longreach there, and Winton I think he's from, but tough as nails, can play in the centres, can play in the halves. He comes on in the middle of the field, and he just adds another dimension to their attack, and they go after their footy, and really impressed with what the Dogs are doing at the minute.
Yeah, well done to everyone at the Bulldogs. Now, there was a cliffhanger to close out the round. The Warriors and the West Tigers. A few controversial moments in this one as well that I know the Tigers and their fans aren't all that happy about. But they had their chances to win this one at Campbelltown, and it's 3 wins in a row now for Andrew Webster's Warriors.
Yeah, a bit of a comeback and late in the game for the Warriors, and I thought the Tigers had it in the bag watching it. This was another incredible game. Went right down to the wire. The young fella for the Warriors that ran down, he's a forward and he made a line break down the wing. What's his name? Is it Lecker?
It was.
Let's give his last name a go. I don't want to be disrespectful, but it is Lecker Helasima.
Oh, yes, Helasima. Yes, that's
Helasima.
Right. No, you're right. When he got that ball in the end of the backline movement and went down the touchline, I just had to make sure we had the right player. But he was.
I think he's still a teenager.
He's
only
19 Billy.
Years old. Boy, there's some good young players coming through at the Warriors. And after the disappointing round 1 performance over in Vegas, they've really turned it around. They've done a great job. They're 3 from 3 coming back from Vegas, and it went right down to this was a great game to watch.
Yeah, it was. West Tigers, though, they can't afford to keep their heads down for long, can they, after that? They'll be disappointed, but they've got an away game coming up against Brisbane this week. But Benji, will he focus on the positives there, given where they're at and building forward at the moment?
Yeah. Look, I think naturally all the players, their heads will be in the disappointment. So it's important for a coach to highlight the positive parts of the game. There were so many positive parts of the Tigers game, and they could very easily have won it. I'm sure they will dissect and discuss the parts where they actually lost the game, because they were in front towards the end of the game, and it was the Warriors that came over the top of them. So, I'm sure there'll be areas, especially with their key position players, that they could have put their team in better positions at certain times of the back end of that game. But they're doing a lot right, the Tigers. I've been really impressed with their season so far. What are they? They're 2-2.
2-2 now
at the minute.
Yep.
And they've got the Broncos up in Brisbane. Don't worry, that they will like their chances against the Broncos, and I don't think that they're rank outsiders. I think the Broncos are going okay, but the Broncos haven't beaten a top side yet. They've beaten the Roosters, the Dolphins, and the Cowboys. So they'll, this is the footy team, the Tigers, and they've got a lot of class in their key positions. Lockie Galvin is a wonderful player, and he's always at you. Dream Bull is starting to find his fitness and his form after coming off a shoulder injury. So, that's going to be an incredible game up in Brisbane. I
just want to point out as well, too, that it was good effort from the Tigers. They'd lost a player in the warm-up and another injury during the game. So, they handled themselves really well. So well done to them. Now, we'll go through, we'll mention the Broncos a little bit later on, but one team we've got to talk about is the Dragons, and that defensive effort in the first half helped them get over the line against the Melbourne Storm. Billy, the first 20 minutes or so, it was just Melbourne attacking raid after attacking raid, but they played tough, the Dragons, and came away with the win.
Yeah, it's the one thing that the Storm haven't had a problem with this year is scoring points, and the Dragons made it really difficult. They got down in the trenches. They were winless going into their bye in round 3, and coming off that, you knew that they were going to come out firing at Kogarah against the one of the best teams in the competition, and they dragged them into a dogfight, and they fought hard of the Dragons, and Shane Flanagan will be really proud of his footy team. They grinded out a victory. It was only 2 tries to 1, and the conditions probably didn't suit the Melbourne Storm, but at the same time, you've got to adapt and you've got to go and play to the conditions, and the Dragons did that better.
To see John Howard there celebrating as well,
Johnny
former
Howard,
Prime Minister.
He was in the sheds, wasn't he?
Yeah. He got amongst it. He's not a bandwagon fan. He's always been loyal to the Dragons, as John Howard, that's for sure.
He sticks strong, Johnny.
Yep, that's right. Now, the Gold Coast Titans, Billy, basically their only poor half this year has been the first half they played against the Bulldogs. Yeah. They've been good now in 2 weeks, wins over Newcastle and now the Roosters. So they're 2-1 with the bye through the first 4 rounds.
Yeah, and I think, their new halves have been playing really good. They're great ball runners. Jaden Campbell, he took that intercept and ran the length. That was a real turning point in the game. And AJ Brimson, just an electric runner of the football, scored a couple of tries. The middle forwards, I think Mo Fodawaker and especially Tino, he makes a huge difference. Obviously missed all of last year with a knee injury, and he just works so hard through the middle of the field, and even when he's out on his feet, he gets down there on the kick chase, and just really sets a standard for that Gold Coast footy team. And Desi's doing a great job there with them, and consistency will be tough, especially without their number one fullback for probably half of the season. Young Kinney, he's out with a neck injury. I think he's getting an operation on a bulged disc in his neck, so. We wish him all the best, but young De Groot, he did a really good job, and you can only win footy games, and that's what they're doing at the minute.
Yeah, so well done to them. They've got a big one coming up this week when they take on the Dolphins in a Queensland derby. It's at the Gold Coast, so that's on Saturday. We'll preview that a little bit later on, but it brings us to the Dolphins, who were gallant in the wet on Friday night in the derby. You just got to think. We talk about taking chances, Billy. It's a theme in what you've been talking about the first few weeks of the season. They had their opportunities to get right back in this contest, but Brisbane were just that little bit too good on the night.
Yeah, the game is more than just giving yourself opportunities. The game is now more than ever, you've got to be good at executing your plays to get your points. And, there's a few teams in the competition that just aren't right there. Parramatta are certainly one. They're probably not as high as the Dolphins in terms of their development, but the Dolphins certainly need to put some focus and energy into their detail of their plays to get their points, finding ways to get their strike players the ball in good situations. I'm talking Herbie Farnworth, I'm talking Hemiso, not just working players. You've got to get those guys the ball where they've already got half an opportunity and they can finish it off and score points for you. So that'll be the focus for Christian Wolf and his footy team. And but like you said, they're working hard, they're fighting hard, and you keep working hard and things will turn for you.
Billy, one of the things I love about the game of rugby league, well, there's so many things we love about the game of rugby league, is that the opportunities that it can create for players. And talk to you about it. Gehamat Shibaskai, who has been in and out of the NRL now for 6-7 years, and he got an opportunity, train and trial with Brisbane, and Michael Maguire even said on Friday night, he said he didn't know what he was doing in giving Gehamat an opportunity early on because he was struggling at training. I'll tell you what, hasn't he repaid the faith and been rewarded for the hard work? He was tremendous on Friday night and has been good for the first 4 rounds.
They're great stories, aren't they? And we just spoke about a whole heap of players at the Bulldogs that have been at other clubs on the fringe and in and out of first grade. Gehamat is one of those players, been at the Cowboys, down at the Knights, and now he's really found a home in that centre position at the Broncos and doing a wonderful job. There's a couple of players in that Broncos team that have been rewarded for the effort and the work that they've put in. And the two that come to mind are Jack Gajewski and Shibasaki. And through their preseason, they earned the opportunity to impress in a game. And then once they got their opportunity in a game, they haven't let that slip. They haven't given anyone else a chance to play those positions because they've done the job. And whilst you still do the job, it sets a really good standard for the footy team that everyone's just got to do their job. And if you do their job, you'll be in the team next week. And Shibasaki scored a couple of tries and, really good storylines. And, they're going along okay, the Broncos. They're winning in different ways than what they have done in the past couple of years. And that would be a really good thing. There's still a lot to work on at the Broncos. They're not the finished product just yet, but they're 3-1 and they're still chalking up victories. And whilst you're chalking up victories, you can keep developing your footy team. You keep growing as a footy team, and it's a long way till September and October. So they're doing a really good job, and they're up in that top half of the ladder, which is where you need to be.
Absolutely. Now, one team that we're used to seeing in that top half of the ladder, but they're not at the moment, had a victory in Vegas, but Penrith yet to win on Australian soil this year. 3 losses in a row for them. What's your take on where the Panthers are at, the 4-time defending premiers, Billy?
Yeah, look, it's Nathan and Dylan Edwards make a huge difference. They're a different team when they come into the side, and they just don't have the depth that they once had, and that's through success. We always knew the day that was going to come that they were going to run out of depth, because you can't let go Stephen Crichton, Jerome Luai, Api Coruscant, Fisher Harris, Taruv, all these players that continually leave every year, 2 or 3 top-line first graders and premiership winning players every year, and not feel it somewhere. And then you get a couple of injuries to your key players. They're just a little bit off at the moment, and they're not playing their best football. They've got a whole heap of errors in their game, and they're fighting hard, but it's just not enough at the minute. Is it panic stations? No, I don't think it's panic, but it is definitely concerning. It's definitely a concern. Nathan comes back this week. He'll make a huge difference. I know you'll probably say, he won't help their defense. Well, he will, because your attack certainly helps your defense. Where you finish your sets your defense up, and Nathan will certainly set their defense up. So he'll make a big difference. But yeah, there's a few concerns at Penrith.
Yeah, because just on that, I mean, with what you're saying there is that, even his kicking game as well, pinning teams down into the corner, and it's been unusual the last couple of weeks seeing Penrith teams, getting the ball on their own line. Usually it's them dominating field position, but they haven't been able to do that without Nathan's kicking game, for example.
If nothing else, they've lost 3 in a row, and that's the first time they've lost 3 in a row since 2019. 2019, that's 6 years ago, was the last time they lost 3 in a row. So through this incredible run, they have never lost 3 in a row in that run, and now they have. So is that telling us something? History certainly suggests things. The other thing is Blaise Talangi. Blaise Talangi was one of the best rookies in the NRL last year, and they've got a whole heap of opportunities to put Blaise in. I don't know whether he's not fully fit because he had a checkered preseason with I think shoulder surgery, or what's going on there. But he is a player that would certainly be able to. I thought he did a really good job when he came on in Melbourne. So whether they put him in the halves or put him in the centres, I think he needs to find a position in that team somewhere.
All right, we'll see what happens on Tuesday this week when the teams come out. Now, plenty to discuss on the Billy Slater podcast, and we're listening to it today thanks to Tab.
Fans always ask, Loza, what was the best era of league? And I tell them, nothing beats the line-breaking, flick-passing, goose-stepping, Vegas-flying, turbo-try-scoring, origin drought-breaking, simply the best era of footy we're in right now. And with more market stats and insights, it's easy to enjoy the best era in footy with the best app in footy.
Tab. We're on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
This is the Billy Slater podcast, thanks to Tab, and it's time now for Billy M Medal time. And Billy, I get the impression that this could be an easy pick for you for team of the week after what you said earlier for the Billy M Medal most impressive team for the weekend.
I'm going to double up. I picked them last week. Last week, the Bulldogs, I went off too early. The Bulldogs were the only team to win 3 in a row. And, after their performance against the Sharks, look, the Sharks are a top 4 team. And they went after them. And, in that second half, they looked far superior. And, they were too impressive not to give them the team of the week again.
Okay, so the Bulldogs, your team of the week. Now, player of the round, there's so many to choose from here, including a couple we haven't mentioned yet. Jake Clifford's performance for the Cowboys against Canberra, for instance. But this might be a little bit tougher, the best player of the round.
This is really tough, actually. There was some good players, but there wasn't an individual one player that really stood out. There has been in the past couple of weeks. We've got Jai Gray, Jake Clifford, Shibaskai, Tino has been playing great, Campbell. The guy, I'm going to give it to a guy. Look, Payne Haas is another one, not just this week, but every week Payne Haas has been incredible this year. I'm going to give it to Jacob Preston. Jacob Preston, without Viliami kick out, he went over to the left-hand side of the field. He's usually a right-back rower. He went to the left-hand side of the field, come up with some really big plays to score points. Didn't just do the hard things in the game. He got the polish on some plays as well that resulted in tries. And Jacob Preston, he's playing really well at the moment and got a lot more in his game than run hard, tackle hard. He's got a bit of skill and got a bit of top end quality. So Jacob Preston goes with the team of the week from the Bulldogs. He's the player of the week.
Okay, that is the Billy M medal. Thanks to Tab. The NRL season is here for the best time in sport. Tab has the best app in sport. Tab, we're on.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
By the way, if Gus is watching, Billy, his Bulldogs aren't flying under the radar anymore. You can't talk him down anymore. What about when we see him at the footy and say, he goes, we'll struggle this week. We'll struggle this week. You're not fooling anyone anymore, Gus.
No, there's no flying under the radar for the Dogs. They've been too consistent over the last 18 months.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, listener questions. This one from David Bandy. Is there a Queenslander who never played... I hope you got your thinking cap on here, Billy. Is there a Queenslander who never played Origin but you thought should have, or at least wouldn't have looked out of place? That's a tough one.
Oh, wow. Have you got a list for me, Salty? Have you got some names you could run off?
I've got a name I can throw out there from a little while ago. Ben Walker.
Who?
Ben Walker at
Ben
one
Walker,
stage.
yeah.
He wouldn't have looked out of place in an Origin.
Not at all. There's been many players that have played Origin that have done a wonderful job for Queensland that you think, oh, wow, they played Origin. So, it's probably gone the other way where, I can't think of anyone. The one guy I would have loved to see play more Origins would be Arthur Beetson. Arthur Beetson is probably one of the most decorated Queensland Origin players ever, and he played one game. And we all remember it, but I would have loved to see Arthur Beetson play for Queensland. The one guy that I love watching, and I've mentioned it a few times on this podcast, is Reggie Cressbrook.
Oh, yes.
He played for the Cowboys, played fullback and on the wing. So I don't think he played State of Origin. So maybe Reggie Cressbrook. There's one.
Well, there's a name. And boy, he was an exciting player. Really
Absolutely.
Good to watch.
That's probably why I liked him.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good question, David. You know what? When we finish recording, there's probably about another 20 or 30 names that might pop up. But, there you go. Now, this one here from Dan Finnegan. Hey, Billy, big fan of the podcast. In 2011, you won the Dally M medal. Do you remember how many points you got? And do you remember who the runner-up was? Yeah.
In short, no and no.
Dr. Google.
It was pretty nervous. I remember being really nervous, at the medal count, when all the attention's on you and you're up there, on the top of the leaderboard and coming into the last rounds. It was actually strange because that was 2011. In 2008, I actually so when you get suspended, you get 3 points deducted from your tally. And in 2008, I lost the Dally M by 2 points. Matt Orford won it, and I'd been suspended for 1 week. So essentially, if I didn't get suspended, I would have won the Dally M in 2008. So I was a bit disappointed. So coming into 2011, and the tally count was really close. I remember it was pretty close. I can't remember how many points. It might have been 29 or 30 or something like that.
29.
29 was it?
29.
There
you
you
beat
go.
Benji by 2.
Oh, Benji.
There you go. Cooper Cronk was third. Paul Gallen and JT both had 24 points. You got 9 more than your skipper. Cameron Smith was all the way down there. He was in 10th place.
Yeah,
so
probably like most years, I did a bit more work than Cam. So
that'll get back. That includes these days as well too. He just waltzes around.
True. He pops up every now and again.
Yeah, 1 game a week, occasionally. Yeah. Hello, Cam. Now
he won't be watching. He's on the golf course.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Probably with the fat.
Oh, fatty. Yeah. Anyway, I better get back to these questions. Susan says, during your career, who were the best and worst players to room with?
Oh, wow.
You wouldn't have wanted to room with your skipper.
No. I had Matt King early in my career at the Melbourne Storm. He was a good roommate, Matty King. I'm not sure. Like, I don't have a worst roommate. I don't know who would be the worst roommate. Would be maybe someone like Jeff Lima or no Will Chambers. He was good. He was always a good laugh. So he would have been a good roommate because he liked watching the races and that sort of stuff as well. So try and keep your mind occupied and not think about the game too much. But I can't think of a worse roommate.
Good stuff. Thanks, Susan, for that one. Send your questions through, folks. We've got some good ones each week. Billy Slater podcast at 9.com.au. Billy Slater podcast at 9.com.au. Billy, round 5 gets underway Thursday night in the nation's capital. Big game, this one, for different reasons for both sides, but Raiders v Sharks to get us underway this week.
Yeah. The Raiders have been away for the last couple of weeks, and they played in Manly last weekend, and then they went straight up to Townsville. So they'll be looking forward to getting back and playing in front of their home fans. The last time they did, they beat the Broncos down there. So there's 2 games that I'm really looking forward to. Friday night, live and free on Channel 9, the Rabbitohs and the Chooks. Latrell Mitchell back. So that'll be a beauty. Don't miss that one. And the Sunday afternoon fixture on Channel 9, the Battle of Brookie, Manly and Melbourne. So they're the 2 that I'm really looking forward to. I'll be at Brookvale on Sunday, and the way that they're turning up there, it is quite the atmosphere. So both teams love playing football. Both teams love using the footy, and they're both, although Melbourne lost on the weekend, they're both in a bit of form. So I think that could be a high-scoring affair and it'll be very entertaining, and it'll be pretty physical. They always are.
Yeah, most definitely. I can't wait for that game. It's going to be an absolute ripper. And as you said, Friday night, there's always plenty of feeling as well with South Sydney. What happens with Jai Gray and Latrell this week when Wayne names his team?
Well, it might be through necessity that Latrell might need to play in the centres. Alex Johnston picked up a shoulder injury. Campbell Graham's still out. Munro's still out. There's a few outside backs, in the rehab centre at Redfern, and I don't know. Look, there's no doubt that Latrell's the fullback. Latrell at his best is the fullback, but he's coming back from injury. He looks really fit. He looks like he's worked really hard, but playing games is different fitness to training, and I don't know which way Wayne would go. I'm suggesting that he's going to go straight back into play fullback because that's his best position and he's most involved there. But there is a case to throw him in the centres through necessity. And Jai Gray has done nothing wrong to lose his spot. But when you've got a world-class player like that and a player that is going to be your fullback at the back end of the year, do you throw him back in? It's going to be interesting come tomorrow afternoon, but I will suggest that he's going to wear the number 1 anyway, put it that way.
All right, well, we'll see what happens there, but either way, we're going in for another terrific weekend coming up for round 5 of the NRL. Billy, enjoy your week. We'll see you at the footy across the weekend and be back for another episode of the Billy Slater podcast next week.
Will do. Thanks, Salty.
Thanks, Billy. That's Billy Slater. I'm Peter Basoldis. Tune in next week. A new episode of the Billy Slater podcast comes out each and every Monday, thanks to Tab.